حمدا لباري الأنام ثم الصلاة والسلام ما ناح في دوح الحمام على الرسول العربي وآله وصحبه ومن تلا من حزبه سبيله في حبه على من العقب. اللهم إن لسان زلات فاغفر زلات ألسنتنا وللكلام سقطات فاغفر سقطات كلامنا، وأنت المثبت فثبت قلوبنا على الطاعة واعصمها من المعصية واجعلنا في سائر أمورنا خيرا. The lung development, embryology, Dr. Paul. All embryology lectures are very easy. There's some concepts if you understand خلاص. So first, lung development, you need to know that it starts from the 4th week. All organs start from the 4th week except the heart, which is starts from the 3rd week. This question that you will definitely give. I always emphasize on it. So all organ development starts from the 4th week, except the heart, which starts from the 3rd week. And you need to know that the cardiovascular system is the first organ system that develops. Now, how does the heart develop? At first, you need to know that the glands and the tube for the heart starts from the laryngotracheal tube. So you have the larynx, the primitive laryngeal inlet, and then there is a budding off, which is basically your where the lungs start to develop. Now you need to understand all this. So first you have this the start of the embryo, like flat embryo. You have your lateral mesoderm, right? You see here, I'm changing this. You have your lateral mesoderm. You have this is the endoderm. You have the intraembryonic cavity, which is the most cavity in this lesson. Now then, this will develop here. I know it's a bit complex, but see, anything that you see yellow, it's the endoderm, okay? And then what? So you have the lungs here, 2 lungs, and then there, the one behind them is what? Your lovely esophagus. Esophagus, and this is the pericardial cavity. This is the heart, as you can see. Then this is much more clearer. You have the pleural cavity, and then you have these lungs. You have the things that's lining the lung, that is the splanchnic, and the one that's lining the cavity, like it's where the cavity is, that's the somatic, where the somatic nerves, and the splanchnic, where the autonomic nerves are. And then this cavity allows the lung to develop, to grow more and more, and just pushes on it. So that's the pleural cavity, and here it just shows you how the lung develops. So what are the stages? First, you have the pseudoglandular stage, you have the trachea, and then you have these tubes and these some glands. That's why we say pseudoglandular. It's like it looks like glands, but they are not glands. They're gonna become one of the most important organs in your body, and this is from the 6th to the 16th week. And the second gland is the canalicular stage. Now you don't need to know about capillaries, and you just need to know that, see, these are just tubes that are closed tubes. It's just full of cells and everything. But this is where the tubes start to become hollow, where you remove all the space inside. When you have a bread bowl, right? A baker hates it a lot, but you have this bread bowl, and now and then you just remove the inside. That's the thing. And then you have the terminal stage, sac stage, and this is one of the most important stages you need to know. This is where the alveoli start to develop, the pneumocytes, and you can even see the lobes starting to form a bit. And this is very, very important because, see, in these stages, the fetus is not viable because they do not have alveoli, they cannot gas exchange, perform gas exchange. But here, after the 26th or 28th week, at 7 months, around 7 months, if a fetus was born premature and he was at this stage, at the terminal sac stage, he will be able to survive. Before this, he will never be able to survive. It's going to be a stillbirth. But in here, he can, if he was born prematurely. And then here is from 32 weeks to 8 years old. So until, if you have like a brother or a sibling that's like 5 years or 6 year old, know that his lungs still developing. He's still producing more alveoli, more pneumocytes type 2, more pneumocytes type 1. This should be, oh, I didn't not change. So this is 32 until 8 years. 32, oh, 32 weeks. Okay. So that's basically it for the stages. Now we need the pathological. Now, how does the lung grow? I mean, you're telling me that the lung grows, but what makes it grow? What makes it grow is your amniotic fluid. You, for a couple of time, for like period of time, you take the amniotic fluid that is mainly produced by your urine, by your kidneys, and then this will go inside the lungs and will be the physical stimulus for its growth. It's like pushing the lungs down, it's making the lung grow. There are, other, as you can see, the prime factor is amniotic fluid. There are secondary factors like expression of some genes, and maybe platelet derived growth factors, insulin growth factors, and thyroid transcription factors for metabolism. But mainly it's your amniotic fluid just pushing the lung down, making it grow and expand and grow and expand and grow and expand. Now there are pathological stages, as I said. Okay. When you have a when you're having a labor, okay, the delivery, and the infant dies. Maybe the mom says, no, it's the fault of the doctor. The fetus was born, he was alive, but then the doctor wasn't able to let him survive. There is some malpractice. What will happen? We will go and take the infant's, the baby, the dead baby, unfortunately, lungs, and we put it over water. Okay? If he was born and he was alive, that means gas went into his lungs. So what will happen? His lungs will float on the water. But if he was born and he was dead, he did not take a single breath in his life, then he will sink. This actually happened. I remember one case when I was back in Bahrain, two twins, and the doctor deemed them they were dead. And then imagine when they took them out of the the fridge that they have, the ثلاجة الموتى, and they took them, and one of the twins actually cried after like 18 hours of pronouncing them dead. And then a big case happened, and all the doctors and the nurses that were in that case all lost their licenses. It was like a really big case, and it was like one of the it was very big. And this is cases that you can see. And then when they put the lungs of the one of the twins, the lungs floated, which means she was alive, and the doctor pronounced it dead, unfortunately. Okay, so as we said amniotic fluid is the one that pushes your lung down. It's like physical stimulus factor where it stimulates lung growth. Now, oligohydramnios means that there is not enough fluid, okay, going into the lungs, and making them grow. Now, what we said, where's most of your amniotic fluid produced? It's from your kidneys, because basically amniotic fluid is your fetus urine. Okay, so if the kidneys have any problem and they cannot produce urine, which is basically amniotic fluid, then the lungs will not develop, and that would be retarded lung development. Agenesis is basically from your diaphragm. If your diaphragm is not working properly, it could cause hernia, and then uh, okay, you have the amniotic fluid pushing down, right? But then you have your, I don't know, your liver or your stomach from the other side just pushing upwards, which just doesn't give the lung space to grow. And if you don't give the lung space to grow, it will not shine. Okay, after this, you have the tracheoesophageal ridge. Now, your trachea and your esophagus, they have a ridge. They are connected to each other until 8 weeks. What is the significance of this? Well, I said about the amniotic fluid. I know it's everywhere, but imagine that your fetus urine, your baby inside, like your urine, your amniotic fluid is one of the most important thing. It stimulates lots of growth. Anyways, so amniotic fluid. Okay, you need to get it back in from your kidneys, right? How? take it. It's like basically you're drinking it, and then it's going inside, and then from the esophagus it can go to the trachea. It just goes to the trachea, and then the fluid goes to the lung. But there is a limit. Too much fluid cause problems. Too little fluid cause problems. Homeostasis. You need a balance. So after 8 weeks, I had enough amniotic fluid now, which will mean okay, just cut off the ridge. I don't want the ridge anymore. But there is lots of buts. You have pathology. So you have something called esophageal atresia, and then you have esophageal tracheoesophageal fistula. Now, what is esophageal atresia? As you can see here, it's basically that your esophagus does not develop properly, and then you have like a cutoff between your lower esophagus and upper esophagus. And then so let's say you only have atresia, it will still cause polyhydramnios. Basically, you're taking the fluid in, and then it just stays in your esophagus. It does not go down to your intestines and then your kidneys, and all this balance, right? So this is a problem because the fluid will just stay there, and then to the point where the fetus will vomit the amniotic fluid. So that's polyhydramnios. And then you have fistula only. That's where okay, there is no, it can go to the kidneys, but there is also a fistula. So the ridge has not been cut off. There is still fluid going to the lung, and this can drown the lungs, because when the baby is when the baby is delivered and you're trying to take some air, all the amniotic fluid is in your lungs, right? You cannot take air in. All the water is just taking all that space. So you're basically drowning your lungs with fistula. And then on atresia and fistula, that's I think the worst one, because not only that the fluid is going to your lungs. No, most of the amniotic fluid is now going to your lungs. Okay, you will vomit some fluid, but there is this pathway, and now it will fill even more faster because there is no fluid going to the kidneys, to the stomach, to that. No, there is a atresia, so there is no pathway to the kidneys, and they'll just go into your lungs, and I think so. That's big problem. And I think this is the last one. You have in your lungs type 1 and type 2 pneumocytes. Basically, type 1 is your simple squamous, and it's for gas exchange. Like it takes 95% of the surface area, while only being, I think, 45% of the amount of cells and all that. And then you have pneumocytes type 2. There is actually a pathological case here. It's your surfactant cell. It's the cuboidal. It produces the surfactant. It's also like a progenitor cell. So there is less pneumocytes type 1. It can differentiate into there. But as we said, why do babies cannot be before that? Because maybe they don't have enough type 2, right? They don't have enough surfactant. They maybe have alveoli, maybe they can do the gas exchange from the canicular stage, but the problem is they do not have a surfactant. You don't have surfactant, you'll have lots of surface tension. You have lots of surface tension. Even though gas is coming in, the lung will just collapse and you cannot breathe, and you're dead, basically. That's it. Hopefully it was short and easy. Good luck in your TBL or your final whenever you're seeing this.